This episode of Going Forward is brought to you by Optimizer, an award-winning PPC management tool used by advertisers worldwide. Save time and boost the performance of your PPC campaigns on Facebook, Amazon, and Google or Microsoft. Get a 14-day free trial at optimizer.com/go/VIP. Guess what, everyone? You know, Kanye West, he is the college dropout. Well, I got the dropout multi-millionaire on the line with me today. How about that, man?
I can't live up to Kanye West, man. Come on now.
But you know what? I love the title of the book, The Dropout Multi-Millionaire. So today on the line with me, I have Mr. Brian Will, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to want to listen to this entire episode. I'm going to pick his brain. We're going to talk about, being an entrepreneur, becoming a serial entrepreneur, selling your business, the mindset that you have to have inside of having a multi-million-dollar business. Why do businesses fail? Why do they succeed? And we're going to talk all that stuff today with Mr. Brian Will. But before we jump into it, Brian, I want you to tell these people exactly who you are and what you do, man.
Oh, man, Eric, hey, thanks for having me on the show today. So if I have a 30-second background, it's failed out of high school, joined the military, started a business, was successful, failed, lost everything, started another business, did okay, did another one, sold to venture capital, another one to venture capital, another one to private equity, consulting for Fortune 500 companies, wrote a couple of books in politics today. My background runs the gamut of anything you can imagine.
Damn. Well, I think first and foremost, thank you for your service to our country.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
And now, I mean, with hearing the highs and lows, I mean, you just described it in that 30-second pitch, man. It sounds like you're addicted to business or addicted to being an entrepreneur.
I'm a bit ADHD, Eric, so I get bored easily. So when I'm building a company, if somebody comes along and offers me money, I'm like, done. I'll take your money. I'll do something else. And that's what I've done over and over and over.
So, I mean, when you build a business, is it usually something that, you're passionate about or something you just see like there's opportunity in that?
My first business, you got to remember, I'm the kid who failed out of high school. So no education, no discernible job skills, got out of the military off active duty, got fired from about 5 jobs, got fired as a waiter. I worked a 12-hour double shift as a waiter and I owed them $6 at the end of the day.
What a story. Talk to me about that.
I was not a good waiter. The owner of that business comes to me at the end of the double shift. He says, Brian, I think you need to find a new career. This one is not for you.
Oh my gosh.
Now, the follow-up funny story is years and years, 25 years later, I own a chain of restaurants today. He applied for a job with my company to be a district manager for us.
Stop.
And we sat down. I said, you don't remember me, do you? And he goes, no, I don't. I said, you fired me 25 years ago because I owed you $6 at the end of a 12-hour shift.
Oh my God.
He started laughing. He goes, I guess I'm not getting this job, am I?
Did you give him the job?
I did not. And it wasn't because he wasn't good enough. I just had better candidates, but it was a great end of that story.
Right. I mean, you know what though? When I was in media, I had a boss that actually told me I didn't know how to negotiate ad agency business. No kidding. Mm-hmm. And when they told me that, I ended up owning an ad agency that did multi-millions. So, sometimes, and honestly, like, it's times like that where you think you've reached rock bottom, especially like, when getting an evaluation like that from who's supposed to be my leader.
Yep.
And then you owing $6 at the end of the night, you feel like, damn, I got nowhere else to go but up. Tell me about that feeling. I mean, because you could have given up and just said, screw this.
Well, I got fired.
What did you learn?
Go ahead. Sorry.
What did you learn?
Well, I got fired and then I tried another job and I ended up getting a job as a busboy. And that's where I met my wife and we ended up getting married. But I'd always had this thing in my head that I think it was from my grandfather growing up. He had a 3rd grade education, but he owned multiple businesses. And he was, he did his own thing, lived his own life. And I always had that desire in me to be able to want to do that. So after getting fired from so many jobs, I decided I'd actually taken a job working on a landscaping crew mowing grass. And I was sitting in the landscaping truck one day and I thought to myself, what am I doing? Anybody can mow grass and dig holes. I'm going to start my own business. So it wasn't that I had a passion. It's just with no education, I figured I could landscape. That's why I started it.
Right.
And 7 years later, I had 7 franchises of that company and we were doing really well. And of course, then I lost everything, went broke again. I
Hmm.
started over selling insurance, and I worked for an insurance agency for 6 weeks. And I thought to myself, why am I working for these guys? I can do this on my own. So
Right.
I started my own insurance agency, and 2 years later, I sold it to a venture capital company. So just
Yeah.
progression.
Interesting. I want to ask you about that though. I mean, you lost everything, but you came back. It's almost like the Rocky philosophy in business. You get beat, and then you just keep coming back for more. But I mean, what were you thinking? Like when you go down, I mean, do you learn lessons on your way down like that to say, like, if I do this again, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do this different? I mean, tell me about those lessons, Brian, because you don't just come back, keep coming back for more blows unless you got your stuff together.
Well, so two things. First of all, at the time when the landscaping company crashed and burned, I was married with a 3-year-old with health problems. So
Mm.
you don't have a choice to not do anything. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like you're just going to say, you know what, I quit.
Yeah.
I still, 10 years later, still had no education and no discernible job skills. So you just got to go out there and figure out what it is, and you got to go hustle it. And that's what I
Hmm.
did. And even
Hmm.
when I got insurance, I had no passion for insurance, but it was just a way I saw that I could make money. So, success in life, and if I have a superpower, it's that I learn from every mistake. And I can
Mm.
look back at my life, every bad thing that ever happened to me turned into something better, without a doubt. If my landscaping company hadn't crashed, I wouldn't have gotten insurance. If I didn't get insurance, I wouldn't have sold to a venture capital company. If I hadn't sold to the first venture capital company, I wouldn't have got the second and the third, and I wouldn't have what I have today. So realistically, that business crash gave me everything I've got. As long as you take the lessons and learn, you continue to go forward.
Here in the South, we call that you turn a lesson to a blessing, is what we
Yes.
call it here in the South.
Yes.
But you mentioned like you were actually on the landscape crew, and then you just said, what am I doing? Um, do you think like anyone can do this? And I'm going to ask you this, for my own selfish reasons, because everyone feels that they can be an entrepreneur, but
Mhm.
not everyone has that, you know?
Mhm.
So what made you feel like, I can do this? I mean, I know you already felt like you were on rock bottom, but what was it inside of you that just said, you know what, I really have the ability to do this?
I've always had a weird belief in myself, right? That I could do whatever it is I wanted to do. But I want to answer your other question, Eric. So, and I teach this
Hmm.
when we do in my mastermind class. The dip, whatever level of success you want to achieve in life, there are going to be a required set of lessons that you're going to have to go through. And the
Oh
example I
yeah.
use is, let's just say there's 100 lessons to get
Hmm.
from zero to success, whatever your success is. Everybody starts in business at a different level. Some people might, if they've got a master's degree or an MBA and they got money and they got backing, they might start at 50 and they only have to learn 50 lessons.
Right.
Me, I had to
Good
learn
point.
110. Like there's only 100, I still had 10 more just to get to the bottom, right?
Wow. Wow.
Everybody can succeed at whatever it is they want as long as they're willing to go through and learn all the lessons along the way. And
Hmm.
that's failure after failure after failure after failure. Too many people quit before they figured out all the lessons, and they never get to the top and they never achieve the success they want. You can do it if you will keep learning the lessons, right? And
Hmm.
the back end of that story is there is a way to skip lessons, and that is to find a coach or a mentor who can come in and say, hey, man, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do
Man.
that. You're doing that wrong. Do it this way. I've already been there. I've already done that. I've already tried that. It's not going to work. You get a
Right.
good coach or mentor, they can start skipping lessons and accelerate your growth to get to that level of success. It's not about personality. It's not about education. Clearly, I have none. It's not about money. I had no money. It's not about any of those things. It's about going through the lessons and learning. But the problem is, Eric, and I always tell people this, Eric. So here's my question. Have you ever met anybody that no matter what they do, they can't seem to win? Just can't seem to succeed. And
I've seen people like that. Is normally their mindset
it
that holds
is.
them back.
And there's other people that everything they touch turns to gold.
Yeah.
That is all you just said it. It's all about your mindset. It's the way your brain accepts and rejects information. It's the way you think. It's the way you make decisions. And in business, if you've never been successful in business, you don't know how. You got to bring in a coach or a mentor who has been successful, who can show you what to do, tell you where you're making mistakes, flatten that learning curve, and help
Yeah.
you get to that success level you want. Anybody can do it. You just have to go through it and get there.
Tell me about your mentor and some of the mentors that you've had and how they've influenced you in a positive way.
I didn't use mentors my first 15 years, and that's why I kept failing. And that's just the fact. It was when I finally found the first guy that I was going to let be my mentor that my business accelerated and we took off. And 3 years later, we had a massive private equity exit. So my first mentor just passed away not too long ago. He was a great guy, but I've had many, and I take mentors in different areas. I've got two right now. One that helps me build my podcast, and I have another one that's helping me build social media. So we call these coaches in different areas.
Yeah.
But I'll give you another funny one. So after I'd sold my company in '08, I went out to see one of my mentors in Park City, and I said, I want to write a book. And he goes, why would anybody buy your book? And I was like,
Wow.
I don't know. Why would they? He goes, you're writing a book about you. You need to write a book for the audience if they're going to read it. And that's the difference. And it took me another 10 years to figure that out. And then I wrote my first book, and it's a Wall Street Journal USA Today bestseller. And today he's like, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
But it was a hard lesson back then. You just don't write a book and it's going to be successful. You got to figure out what the audience wants to hear and what the audience needs to learn. And that's what you write about. So
That's a great point. Yeah, I got stuck in that same avenue too. It was like, man, I got a story to tell. Like, what do I say? I can't make it about me,
right.
Because it's not like you're a celebrity or anything else.
Exactly. That's what he said. You're not a celebrity. Nobody's going to read your story.
Right. It's like, who's Brian? Well, Brian, when how do you know when you have a good mentor? Because like right now, especially today, okay, there's every time you go on YouTube, someone's popping up, buy my course, I'm a coach, I'm a mentor. How in the hell do you recognize who's a good mentor?
This is so, so, so important. And I tell people this all the time. I can go online right now and get a coaching certificate for $149 and be a certified coach, right?
Yeah.
You have got to vet the people that you are going to allow to put information in your brain. Because that information that goes in your brain changes your filter and affects the way you think and the decision making and whether you're going to be successful or not. You got to vet those people, and they have to have had success doing what it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
Right. I know there's a coach right in when I live in Atlanta. She's like 4 miles from me. I know for a fact everything she's ever done has failed. And I mean failed huge. And yet she is a master coach. Like the only thing you can teach is what you've done. Otherwise, you're just hurting people because you have no idea how to succeed because you've never done it on your own.
That's true. Right? If anything, they're just marketing themselves really, really well.
Amazing social media, amazing graphics, amazing content, but there's no substance behind it.
Wow.
So vet the people, vet them hard. Make sure that they've had the success. I always say, here's another one. I'll tell you this, Eric. I tell people, stop chasing the advice of billionaires. Because a billionaire thinks at a level that has no relation to what you and I are doing right now, right?
That's true.
You need to find somebody 10 steps ahead of you, 20 steps ahead of you that's been there and done that can say, I just did that and I'm going to succeed. And I always use this example. If you owned a trucking company in San Francisco and you were moving product to LA, right? Me and you would be like, okay, what's the best time of day? How do we skip traffic? How do I get around this route, that route? Let's ask a billionaire, Elon Musk. He got stuck in traffic one day, and you know what he did? He started the boring company to dig tunnels underneath places so he could move his car faster, right? That advice isn't going to help me and you. But so find somebody that's 10 to 20 steps ahead, been there, done that, and can walk in and just be like, man, I just did this. Don't do that. Don't do that. Do this, do this. Coaches and mentors are so important.
So it's definitely safe to say, if you have a mentor, make sure they have done what you're doing, right?
Right.
I remember John Maxwell, he said something, he had gotten off stage once and someone went up to him and they said, man, that is awesome. Everything you said, I loved it. I want to do what you do. And John Maxwell said, that's great. But do you want to do what I did?
Exactly.
And I think that's the number one thing that people, they don't think about when choosing a mentor or even looking to someone for guidance or success or anything else. And like you said, you failed many times until you got yourself a mentor. And that's where I think the difference is for a lot of people, man.
I call myself the 20-year overnight success because all anybody ever sees is what happened yesterday. They don't see what I did to get there. Right?
Yeah. What are some things, in creating all the businesses that you've done, right? What are some things that people should keep in mind when starting a business? Because, that is like, there's no perfect answer to that. So how do you answer something like that, Brian?
So I call this the 5 keys to success. You want to hear those?
Bring it.
Okay. So we start off with a premise that most people that start their businesses are technically a specialist or a technician in what they do, right? And I use the example of Joe the plumber. Joe the plumber. Joe worked for a plumbing company for 20 years. Now he wants to start a business. Joe's going to start Joe's Plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
If Joe's Plumbing doesn't succeed, it's not because Joe doesn't know how to be a plumber. It's because Joe doesn't understand the soft skills of running a business. And that's the difference between success and failure. Most businesses don't fail for the technical, they fail for the soft skills.
Okay.
So with that in mind, I say there are 5 things, there are 5 keys to success in business. I actually wrote this for Forbes magazine.
Okay.
And number 1 is, if you never successfully run a business, you need to check your ego and realize you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
You don't know how to make the proper decisions. And with that in mind, you need to get a coach or a mentor who's been there and done that to help you. That's step number 1. Check your ego, understand you don't know what you're doing, get a coach mentor.
Got it.
Number 2, you need to figure out, and this has got to be a hard why are you doing this business? Because I'm going to tell you right now, the whole world is going to be against you when you're building this company. There's going to be problems, issues, employees, the government, taxes, everything you can imagine is going to come at you. And it's going to be like hitting a wall of bricks all the time. And if the why you're building this business isn't strong enough, you will quit and give up. And you remember those 100 lessons? You'll never get to the top.
That's right.
So you got to have a why that is bigger than the problems that are going to come at you. So you got to figure out that why. Number 3, you got to figure out who you are in business. And you said this earlier, not everybody who starts a business is technically an entrepreneur.
That's true.
Not everybody who starts a business is a good manager. Joe the plumber knows how to be the plumber. He's a technician. He doesn't know how to be the manager of the business and do the paperwork and manage the taxes. You got to understand who you are in the business and then backfill the other roles that are necessary in order for your business to succeed.
I agree 100%.
I am a horrible manager. Don't ask me details. I think in bullet points. If you put a piece of paper, I read the first 2 sentences and I fall asleep, right?
Brian, you're my brother from another mother.
I'm just telling you, I know my weakness, but I also know what I'm good at, right? So who are you in your business, and then backfill the rest. 4, why would anybody buy your product from you? Okay. So if you're just starting a business and you have the same product as everybody else and the same service as everybody else, why is anybody going to buy it from you? You need to figure out what makes you different, what makes you unique, what makes people want to come to you to buy your product. Otherwise, they can go anywhere. You're never going to scale a business unless why people should buy from you is clear cut in their minds, right?
Yeah.
They need to know, well, this is why I own a restaurant in downtown Alpharetta, which is my hometown. I'm the only bar in downtown that has 20 55-inch TVs. I have domestic beer on tap, and we play sports, and we have music bingo and music on the weekends. Nobody else does that. That's why they come see me. I know why people come to me. Okay. Why should they buy your product? And number 4, and this one's critical for business owners, you need to understand the math and the numbers behind your profit and loss statement. You need to understand how your business runs. You don't have to be a CPA. You don't have to do the accounting, but you have to understand the critical metrics inside your business so that you can track whether you're winning or losing on every single line item. That is one of the most critical skills that entrepreneurs are missing. They don't manage their P&Ls or profit and loss statements, and that's why they end up failing. So those are my 5 keys. That's a summary. Takes a lot longer to go through them, but that's my summary.
You know, Marcus Lemonis had this line. He said, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business.
Yes.
And, you know, I actually worked in restaurants too. And I used to work for a brand called Ruby Tuesday.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
And when I first started at Ruby Tuesday, this was 1990. I'm dating myself, Brian. 1996, 97 is when I started with them. And when I worked with them, I went around opening restaurants. I opened like 19 restaurants. I would go troubleshoot restaurants that were in trouble. So like 6 restaurants, I would go troubleshoot. So if a restaurant had a food cost problem, I would go in. When the restaurants would open up, you know, you go in pre-opening, first, second week of opening. You've seen it all before. And what I learned from running restaurants has taken me, I still use today, even in marketing, still use it today. And we talked about, you know, just the product, you know, if you are serving your signature item and you go to 2 different tables with that same signature item specs and everything else, plate presentation, you're going to get 2 different personalities and 2 different kinds of behaviors. So then it taught you people, you know, and I remember, you know, my old restaurant boss said, he said, what's the most expensive piece of equipment inside the entire restaurant? And I'm looking around, I'm like, oh, the Dell Field, the Dell Field, the walk-in fridge. He said, no, an empty seat.
Yep.
And And I never thought about it. I was like, wow. I was like, that's it. And he's the one who taught me. He said, you lose money when you're busy. And you have to make sure that you have your specs, you know your product, you know your procedures all in place before you get busy.
Mhm.
But, like, the most important thing that you just said, the last number 5 I wanna jump on is the numbers, because one of the things I learned when I was being a restaurant manager was I learned inventory, I learned numbers, I learned I had to be under a 28% food variance to be able to make money, I
Mhm.
had to keep my labor below 18%, and those things kind of they go into business today for me.
Mhm.
So I learned those set of numbers, and there was a time when I first started my own business where I swear we almost ran ourselves out of business, and
Mhm.
we were so busy. But the problem was we were cheap. We were too cheap. We were too good to be true cheap, and we were
Mhm.
really good at what we were doing. I couldn't figure out. I was like, "We're so busy.
Mm, yeah.
Why are we, like, struggling to make any money?" And it was because we were cheap.
Yep.
So, that last point, which I think is really important. So, how many people do you run across that know their business, but they don't know the business of their business?
Very few small business owners, and I'll call it 0 to 5 million, understand the deal. I've gone in to buy restaurants many times, and the first thing I always ask the seller is, "Give me 24 months worth of your P&Ls, month by month, so I can look at them." Because what I want to do is what we call pattern recognition through P&L analysis, historical
Mhm.
P&Ls. And 8 out of 10 times, they're like, "We don't keep that information." Like, how can you not keep that? How do you even know what you're doing? I can tell
Wow.
you when I hire management, I just interviewed a manager from a big chain, national chain, to come work for me, and this person said, "Yeah, I manage all the ordering for the liquor and the food." I said, "Oh, well, how do you?" And this is my trick question: How do you determine how much liquor to order each week? And she
Mhm.
and she said, "Well, wait, I figure out what we're low on, and then I just order that." And I'm like, "No,
They're
that
not
is
using
not how you do
theoretical
it.
sales. They're
No,
not
that's
using
not how
theoretical
you
sales or
do it."
anything.
I
Oh
can
my
tell you
gosh.
that there are 4 metrics in a restaurant that will determine whether you succeed or fail, and it's revenue against food costs, liquor costs, labor cost. Food, liquor, and labor costs have to be within 1 to 2 percentage points of the target. And if you're outside
Absolutely.
of that, you're losing money. And if your
Right.
people who are doing your ordering don't understand those metrics, then who the hell knows what's going on, right? You're just
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
you're spitting in the wind, you're shooting in the dark. It makes no sense. And this applies to every business. It's amazing how many business owners and they're like, "Well, I don't understand the numbers. They're confusing to me." Then bring somebody else in who does and
Exactly.
explain it to you because you're not ever going to succeed or scale if you don't understand the basics of business. And the basics is that profit and loss statement.
Hey, it's Eric here from VIP Marketing, and I want to ask you, digital marketers, something. Are you frustrated with your current PPC marketing campaigns? Well, I want to tell you about a tool that we use here at our agency. It's called Optimizer. You have the ability to get your reports up to date and make sure that you get alerts on them. You can even work into workflows as well. So if you're frustrated with your campaigns right now in the reporting systems that you use, I want to give you a 14-day free trial of Optimizer. Go to optimizer.com/go/VIP. Is it important? You mentioned this earlier. You said you're horrible at detail. You read the first 2 bullet points. Is it important to make sure that you hire your weakness inside of a business?
Without question. Again, I have a 3-person accounting staff. Like one person does payroll, one person does HR, one person does uh, AP and AR data entry, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm,
when of all the mass information that comes in, I look at 6 metrics in my company. Just give me these 6 line items. That's all I want to see because
mhm.
I know that those are the core metrics, and if I can track those metrics as they go up and down, right?
Right.
Profit, cash flow, outstanding bills, amount of money in the bank, and then break it down by each restaurant in the restaurant chain. So I know exactly what metrics to look at so that I
Wow.
don't have to pour through mass amounts of data.
Mhm.
And that applies to any business. Um, any business.
You know, I met a guy. I don't know if you know him. His name is Vern Harnish, and he wrote this book called Scaling Up. And we were in Key West at a conference, and one of the things, so very very intimate. So like 15 people in a room with
Is he
Vern
out of
Harnish.
Chicago?
I think he is.
He is
I
my
think he
friend's
is.
business partner. He's an mergers and acquisitions guy.
Yeah, he's a very, very talented
Yeah.
entrepreneur, and, one of the things that he said was, he said, "People, you like to trust your gut." He said, "But the one thing you need to do if you're trusting your gut is feed your gut," right?
Mhm.
And I wanted to ask you, like, sometimes with business owners, we don't rely on others, or we think that we know the answers. Should we rely on our own advice? And how should they make decisions?
I just did a podcast. It came out this week with a guy named Jason Duncan. And the title of the podcast is Stop Taking Your Own Damn Advice.
Mm,
And it gets back to the very first thing we talked about. If you've never been successful at doing what you're doing, then your own advice is probably not very good,
mm.
right? Because you don't have that experience necessary to make those decisions.
They're usually
So,
making an emotional decision at some point.
or you're guessing, right? So I call this your personal filter, right? Your personal filter is what sits behind your brain. It's your subconscious. And every bit of information that comes at you every day is filtered through this personal filter, we call it. And that
Mhm,
filter accepts or rejects whatever's coming into you. And if it accepts it, it goes into it's an alive, living thing. It goes into the next decision making process. And I always like to say
mhm.
people are listening to me on this podcast, and there are people that are going, I don't, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And there are
Right,
other people that are going, oh my God, that's gold. I'm going to use that.
right,
And that is a
right.
product of how they are accepting or rejecting information based on when they were born, what their parents told them, when they went to school, what their teachers told them, what their friends told them, what the peer pressure came in, their college professors, every bit of information, every TV show you watch, every book you read, it all affects this filter, and it determines how you accept or reject information,
Mhm.
which is why some people always succeed and some people always fail. They don't know how
Hmm.
to process the information correctly, right?
Right.
So yes, you have to. If your filter is not good and you have never done it before, then your filter doesn't know how to process information to be successful in business. That's why
Mhm.
you got to bring somebody else in to do it for you.
And sometimes people are just comfortable receiving information that they're okay receiving.
Well, it's an ego thing. I don't
Yeah.
want to listen to that guy or whatever. I can tell you, I didn't go to
Good
college.
point.
I fell out of high school, but I have read more books than probably anybody I know. I mean,
Mm,
hundreds.
mhm.
Can I tell you my favorite three books if you're a business owner?
Yeah.
Here's my favorite three books. First is Rich Dad Poor Dad. It is the baseline book for anybody who wants to start a business.
Robert Kiyosaki,
Oh
right?
my gosh, yes.
Okay.
Second is a book called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. And
Heard of Malcolm Gladwell.
Blink explains what I just told you about this accepting and rejecting information in real time. And basically, Blink says you make decisions in the blink of an eye without ever thinking about it. You're not processing it. You're making decisions just like that. And those decisions are made by that personal filter, I call it. So that's a
Mhm,
really good book. And the
mhm.
third one is called The E Myth Revisited. And it talks about the four personalities in the business. It talks about that entrepreneurs most of the time aren't really entrepreneurs. Just because you start a business doesn't make you an entrepreneur.
There you
Most
go.
most people that start businesses probably shouldn't be running the very business they start.
I I agree.
So that's a really good book, The E-Myth. I give those away like candy. So three really, really good books.
One of the things you talked about earlier was, ego. So how do you, for the people who say, like, "You know what? I love what you're saying, Brian. Brian, everything that you're saying is gold. You're giving me jewels, gems,
Mhm.
but I don't know how to get my ego out of the way so I can move forward with my business." How do you do that? And what advice would you have for people that wanna get their ego in check and move forward and be better business owners?
So here's the deal. The reason you can't get your ego in check is because your filter's messed up. Okay. So if you're actually asking me that question and you actually want to know the answer, then I will tell you to forget what you think you want to do and make a conscious decision right now that I'm going to
Mhm.
check my ego.
Mm.
Make a decision to check your ego. Then make a decision to hire somebody, a coach or a mentor to come in and help you make decisions better than what you're doing. You have to put aside what you think, what you want to do, put that aside if you believe what I'm telling you and make a decision to check your ego and then make a decision to find somebody to help you. And if you will
Right.
do those two things, you will be 1,000% better off than if you just continue relying on your own opinion, your own advice.
I think, a lot of us, I heard the term when I was doing this event, and we use a lot of, what you call me search.
Hmm.
We use a lot of me search versus, research in what we're doing, you brought up, Elon Musk earlier when you talking about traffic, and you say he just digs the tunnel. What would you say is, like, if I had to say, okay, well, Brian, you say some of the same things that I've heard Elon say. What's the difference between the two of you? What distinguishes Brian Will from someone like an Elon Musk?
This is my favorite question. Did you read this somewhere? Are you cheating on me here, Eric?
No, man. I just get prepped,
I
man.
ask people all the time, what is the difference between you and me and Elon Musk? We're
Mm,
people, right? Now
mhm.
we wear pants, we eat 3 times a day. We're the only difference between you and me and Elon Musk. It goes back to a couple little things.
Yeah,
Have you ever heard the phrase that the rich get richer and the poor get poor?
true.
That's a true
Yes.
statement.
Yep, yep.
And do you know why? Mindset.
It's a lot. That's true.
It's mindset.
That's true.
You ever
That
heard
is true.
a rich guy say, "Hey, man, if I lost everything today, I could rebuild it in a few years"? How is that possible? It's mindset. It's
Yeah.
the way they think. The only difference between me and you and Elon Musk is the way we think. That's it. There's no
Mhm.
other difference.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a little Asperger's disease and he's clearly a freaking genius, but it's really just the way you think. So if you want to be, I always say you are who you are, and who you are got you where you are.
Yep.
And if you want to go someplace more, then you need to change who you are. And the only difference between you now and you 5 years from now are going to be the people you associate with, the books you read, the podcasts you listen to. It's the information you're going to put in your brain. That's the only difference between you now and being wherever it is you want to go and doing whatever it is you want to do. You got to think different.
Do you feel like anyone who has, let's just say if you got the mindset to get you here, that you always need to dial the mindset up for where you want to go? And I'm only asking that because I heard Magic Johnson say something. He said, when I first got into business, I was very interested in talking about $10 million deals. He said, now I don't have time to talk about a $10 million deal. I need to talk about $100 million deals, So do you have to always dial that mindset? And then how do you do that? And you mentioned the company you keep.
So I will tell you that he's 100% correct. However, success is a progression of ideas and execution to move you to increasing levels of whatever success means to you,
Wow.
right? So when he
Wow.
was thinking $10 million deals, that's because that was a reasonable, achievable goal for him. If he started out saying, I'm going to make $1 billion deal, it would have never happened. He
Mhm.
wasn't ready.
Right.
He
You got to
wasn't
get
ready.
you got to get to that first level first.
So you can say, yes, I want to make $1 billion, but let's back it down to 100 million. Let's back it down to 10. Let's back it down to 5. Let's back it down to 1. I always do things in reverse, right? And let's
Mhm.
build a progressive goal set to move us up each level. And each time you get to a new level, you will increase what you believe that you're able to achieve.
Right.
It's progression is the deal. I can remember, Eric, when I made $100,000 a year for the first time, and I thought, holy crap.
Right.
And today, I will tell you, my stock portfolio account makes or loses 100,000 a day, and it doesn't bother me when it goes down 100,000 a day. But that's because it's a progressive mindset to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not worried about making $50 anymore. So
Mhm.
it's all about that progression, right? Build a progression. People, I also say that don't fall into the trap of set your goals huge. If your goals aren't so huge. No, I don't. I set the goal huge, but set a progression of goals so that you can actually achieve. Nobody wants to go through their life failing every single day at every single thing
That's
because your
absolutely
goal
right.
is so high you're never going to achieve it. That just
Mhm.
makes you a loser failure in your own mind, and that's going to hold you back.
Well, that's what a lot of these, coaches out there are selling. One of my favorite books is from Jim Collins, Good to Great.
Hmm.
And but inside that book, he talks about having a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Hmm.
But then, some people, I guess they just see it as going from $5 to 5 billion
Right.
instead of saying, I want to go from $5 to 5,000 to
Yes.
5,000 to half a million, then to 5 million.
Who's going to be happier? The person that says, I want to make 100, 1,000, 5,000, 100, and then they actually achieve those goals. I made 5, I made 10,000, I made 100. Or the guy who says, I want to make $1 billion, and he never gets there.
Right.
And he's failed every day his whole life. And that just drags down on your soul.
He said
Achieve achievable
unrealistic.
progressive goals.
Wow. Inside of your business, how do you think that people can, because you have this business where nowadays a business is not four walls like it used to be, right?
Mhm.
How do you build value in your business?
By the way, Collins is so high above us that he's setting big goals because they're achievable to him. So be careful when I said earlier about
Oh yeah,
chasing the advice of billionaires.
oh
Okay,
yeah.
let's go back down to your question. How do I achieve value in my business? I
Mhm.
guess I would ask what your definition of value in a business means. Is that a monetary thing? Is it how many people you're helping? What does value to you mean?
And that's a great point too, because it's not always money. It's whatever the service you provide, how valuable or what they perceive it as, you know? So, like, for example, if I provide a service to you and that service does so much for you personally or so much professionally, then now what I do for you has a great deal of value. And we're not throwing a monetary figure on it at all, but just still, it's like it's how you make them feel or
Sure.
what you've done for them, you know?
I had a conversation with my daughter at dinner last night, and she was talking about eventually wanting to start a business. And I questioned her, I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And she said, "I want a business that's part of the community. I want to be there. I want to be the face. When people come in, I want them to say, 'Hi, Stephanie, how are you doing today?' And I know who they are. And then I want to be able to be involved in my community and give back to my community and know the people in my community." That's her goal in business. It's not, she said, "Money's good and I need to make maybe 100 grand, but that's not my drive. My drive is to make enough
Smart
money
girl.
to be happy, but also to be a contributing member of my community." And I was like, wow, that's a really good goal. I mean, I didn't have that kind of great goal
Wow.
when I was your age. I just wanted to make money. So clearly my kids
Wow.
are better than me.
Well, and that's also mature too. And I think the mindset of some of the younger folks nowadays and starting a business is a lot more different, you know? Because, they are some of them are simple
Mhm.
and some of the young people, they have traveled more than we have
My
to
daughter's got more countries than me. She's like 29, I'm 25.
but exactly. And so for them, that's the value of life is, seeing, different lands, different countries, different languages, cuisines,
Mhm.
and and for the mindset of someone else, who could be a counterpart of yours, value for them is money.
Mhm.
Value for them is money. And it's just it's such an interesting dynamic in business. And let me ask you this question. Now you brought up your daughter now. Um, she said she wanted to have a business to be able to help the community. There are others that want to have a business just saying, I want to be my own boss and I want to make a lot of money,
Mhm.
right? What do you think is the difference in between the entrepreneur of 10, 15 years ago and the entrepreneur today?
Oh gosh. I don't even know if I could answer that question. Um, I don't know. I don't know the difference between then and I was an entrepreneur 15 years ago. I think a
Mhm,
lot of times, and I use this example. I think people go into business for two reasons. So
mhm,
they either go into business because they think they can make a lot of money. They think they can
mhm,
make more money than their job,
mhm.
or they think they're going to go into business to create a lifestyle that is better than the lifestyle they had working at their job. So I think those are the two reasons people do it. It's either money or
Good
lifestyle.
point. Yep, yep.
Now, when people go into business, I call them the five levels of income. Most people get into business and they need to make enough money to pay the bills. That's
Mhm.
goal number one. Goal
Yep.
number one is not to give back to my community. Goal number one is I have to cover my bills, pay the rent so I can eat and sleep. Once you're paying the bills, the next phase people tend to go into is buying toys, right? So they start buying. So now they got to, like, I did this when we sold our first company. I went and bought everything you can possibly imagine because I was out of control.
Mhm.
If they get past that phase, they tend to go into, uh-oh, now I need to start securing my lifestyle phase. I didn't do that with my first business. That's why I lost everything. Too much debt. Didn't save anything, had no backup. So now they're
Mhm.
trying to secure their lifestyle. The next one is, what am I going to do for my children? And then the final one is, how am I going to set up a legacy and do something for the rest of the world? Right.
Wow.
So
Mhm.
I think a lot of times you find people that have not built businesses say, well, you should start a business to help the world. And my answer is, I can't help the world right now if I can't pay my mortgage.
True.
So I need to pay my mortgage first. And then I need to get over my ego problem that I need to buy toys. And then I need to secure my future so that what I have can't be taken away from me. Then take care of my family, and then I can take care of the rest of the world. So I call this the evolution of making money.
Mm.
Um, is that any different today than it was a long time ago? I have no idea.
I think it really depends on the person.
Well,
It really
then,
depends. It depends. I think it depends. Now that you say that, I think it depends on the person. Who that's coming up. I still remember this old saying. It was says, "Granddad starts it, Dad grows it, Junior blows it."
right. So let's analyze what I just told you in comparison to what I said about my daughter. My daughter has
Mhm.
already got into this whole community thing. Why do you think that is? It's a good trick. Here's a question for you. Why do you think my daughter has already wants to start a business and jump ahead of the pay the bills, buy the toys, sec- secure your lifestyle, and she wants to move into the whole community thing. Why would that be different for her than me?
I think for her, she had a mentor in front of her who was you, and she watched you do the things that she wants to do, and she watched and learned from you. I think that's a great reason is because she saw it.
I would
If you didn't have an entrepreneur mindset, would she come to you and say, "I want to start a business?"
I would love it if that was 100% accurate, and it might be a little. I will give
Mhm,
you a more base human reaction is that she knows that daddy's always going to take care of her. She doesn't have to worry about her future. She doesn't have to buy the toys. She doesn't have to secure her future.
mhm.
Her future is secured, so she can literally jump step into being the person that's going out. And by the way, she works as a director of development for the Salvation Army. Her whole life has been about helping people.
Wow,
But
good.
I think there's part of it, and this just because she knows that her future is taken care of. So she has the opportunity to do higher level community society based things than I did when I started.
Wow, there's definitely a lot of jewels and nuggets in what we talked about earlier. And one thing that I want people to know is definitely because you have a business license didn't mean that you're an entrepreneur or people throw that word CEO around.
Yeah.
And I hate the title. I do. I don't know why. I mean, I know my position, but that's just me personally.
I call myself a member because I'm a member of my LLC.
Great way to look at it. How let's talk about these books. I mean, it takes a lot for someone to say they want to write a book. You had a mentor that told you, why in the hell do they want to write? Why the hell do people want to read about
Yeah.
you? And you had to write about what people wanted to hear. So let's talk about your books, why you wrote the books, and what was going through you when you were. Did you feel like you got an elephant off your chest when you did that?
Weirdly enough, the book that I'm finishing right now, it'll be out next month. The title's been on my computer for 30 years. The first book I wrote, the title's been on my book for since my daughter was 16. So we'll call it 12 or 13 years. The
Hmm.
first book, and my kids were growing up, I always used to say, "Hey, life lesson coming up. Life lesson. Listen to me. Here's a life lesson." And so my first book is 37 life lessons.
Wow.
But the book title is "I Give the Dumb Kids Hope." And the reason I know you're always like, "What?" So
No, it's interesting.
the story is, and remember, I failed out of high school, no education, nothing, right? So the story is my kids went to a private school. These private schools load these kids up. They're getting them ready for college. And she would sit up till midnight or 1 o'clock every day doing homework. I would get mad at her all the time. You got to go to bed. You need sleep. One night I go in the kitchen at 1 a.m. She's laying on the floor doing her homework. I said, "Honey, go to bed." She said, "Daddy, you're not supporting my educational goals. I have to get a good education to get into a good college to get a good job."
Wow.
I said, "Honey, your education isn't that important." She said, "Yes, it is." I said, "Well, then how do you explain me? We're living in a friggin' mansion. I mean, I've got every toy in the world, and I failed out of high school." She said, "We were talking about you in school the other day, and we decided that you give the dumb kids hope." Now, that was a little crack at my daughter about me, but that became the title of my first book. But my first book is a story of I had the world stacked against me. I mean, abusive home, failed out of high school, kicked
Man.
out at 18, no place to go, no money, no
Wow.
help, no education, severe ADHD.
Oh my gosh.
And yet I persevere. The baseline of that book is I don't care what your background is. My daughter had
Mhm.
to have open heart surgery. I had bad credit. I couldn't open a checking account when I started my first business. No matter what your background is, you can succeed if you will continue to learn and persevere. So that's what that book is about.
Wow. Wow.
The second book I started, it's called The Dropout Multimillionaire, and
Mhm.
it's 37 business lessons in how to succeed in business with no money, no education, and no clue. And that was me. No clue what I was doing. And I started out thinking it was going to be more of a technical book, and it ended up being more soft skills, which is what we talked about earlier. It's about the
Yeah.
mentality of success and why people fail. Most people fail for the same reasons. And a lot of those reasons are ego, by the way.
Yeah. I agree.
In fact, I'm working with an incubator up in Ohio. They're a university state funded incubator that brings in these people, and they go through a 6-week course to learn business tactics. And if they succeed at the course, then the incubator will bring them in, give them money, and teach them. I
Mm.
said, "After all that, what's your success rate?" He said, 50% success rate.
Mhm.
I said, "Of the 50% that fail, that you've done all that work and you bring them in," I said, what's the number one reason they fail?" And he said, "Ego." That ego will kill you faster than anything else. So I wrote that book. That was the Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestseller, did really well. And then the book coming out now is called No, and it's the psychology of sales and negotiation. And it's 40 lessons in negotiation from a street smart negotiator. As I like to say, every sale you make is a negotiation. You're either negotiating price or you're negotiating whether they should buy something from you. And if you lose that negotiation, they're going to buy it from somebody else. So
That's true.
we go through a whole book on sales and negotiation tactics, all mental stuff. It's not slick, cheesy lines. It's not hardcore. I'm not manipulating people. It's just understanding the human nature behind why people think the way they do, why they react the way they do, and how you can overcome objections before the client ever has them. And that's how you become a master salesperson or a master negotiator.
Let me ask you this last question. What does no mean for your business?
No is the most powerful word in the spoken language. Any sales or negotiation, Richard Branson has a saying. I love Richard Branson. If your first offer doesn't insult them, you offered too much. Okay. So we know that any good negotiator, their first response to whatever you say is going to be no. And so I always tell people, by the way, if you're not good at negotiation, you better bring in someone who is before you go up against a negotiator, because they're going to eat your lunch.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We have what we call the Brian Will School of Negotiation in my company. We have contractors come in. The first thing they tell us, my staff is trained to tell them, my boss is going to say no. So you're going to have to come up with a better price than that. And they always do. Right? So especially in business, you have to be so careful with every single dollar in your business. No is just a standard response with us. So no will get you out of trouble. It'll keep you from making bad decisions. If you're confused and you don't want to do, you just say no. And then gives you a chance to step back and think about things. So no is a powerful word.
Man, Brian, we're not that far from one another. You're in Georgia and I'm in South Carolina here, man. We definitely have to find a way and a time to be able to meet face to face. I really enjoyed our conversation here, man. Brian.
Are you in Charleston?
Yeah, I'm in Charleston.
My buddy has a place right downtown Charleston in the historic district. So I get down there every now and then. I love that town.
Well, man, I tell you what, we got to make sure that we connect.
Sure, 100%. Yeah.
Absolutely. I would love to do that, man. Brian, Brian, tell people how to find your book, how to find your podcast. I want them to know exactly, all about Brian Will's social media channels and everything else as well.
Everything is on www.brianwillmedia.com. And Dropout MM is on every social media platform out there. But if you just go to the brianwillmedia.com, you can see the podcast, the books, the mastermind group. You can see all that kind of good stuff.
Man, well, I thank you, and also tell your daughter I'm proud of her as well. Never met her, but I think she's got a great head on her shoulders, and I know exactly where she gets it from.
I did good.
And yeah, you did good. I want to tell our listeners, man, thank you so much for giving us your most valuable asset, which is your time. I want to thank my amazing guest, Mr. Brian Will. In case you missed it, you missed out on a lot, but this guy's got a lot of jewels and gems there for you. Brian, the crazy thing is, I'm looking straight in the camera. There's no script here, man. Just doing it all, man. So, if you feel this podcast has been great for you or given you great value, we talked about that word, make sure that you share it to those that you like and love. And also we would appreciate a great rating on the podcast as well. I want to thank my guest, Brian, again. And Brian, we're going to connect on social media as well, man.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate it.
Brian, great talk, man.
That was a good one.
Great talk, man. I want to thank you all for giving us your most valuable asset, your time. And also a huge thank you to our sponsors over at Optimizer. For all of you who are running PPC campaigns and you want to see how to do it better and get better results and actually boost the performance of your campaigns and save time, get a free trial at optimizer.com/go/VIP.